Don't put your yield at risk. Put your trust in proven solutions. Anvil Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.ca.
We're going to talk about manganese on wheat because this is definitely a question that comes up quite often, especially in the spring. But what conversations are happening right now about manganese deficiency on wheat?
So there's all sorts of weird, wild, and wonderful things happening in the wheat crop right now, particularly down here in this deep southwest where we've had some weather and some growth is starting to happen. But Dungannon Dan, he's in that dry area, seems to be the desert of Ontario. And remember, so manganese is one of those elements, one of those nutrients that is really hard to understand. And Michael sent me an email saying, my agronomist says I need to put on manganese. Pete, you talked about manganese on the word. Can I mix it in with my 28% nitrogen and my ammonium thiosulfate? And the answer there is absolutely not, because we have to apply it as a foliar. And then he said, well, can I mix it in with my herbicide, fungicide, PGR pass? And the answer there is, well, maybe, except that it's manganese sulfate. We can get antagonism. The more you put in the tank, the more likely you are to get burn. And so it's kind of like you can, but if you're actually putting in dry manganese sulfate at 6 pounds or 7 pounds of product per acre, 2 pounds of actual manganese, man, the chances of that messing up one of those other things in the tank or causing additional burn gets to be pretty significant. So then you back away and say, well, it should be a pass by itself, or maybe we don't need the fungicide, or maybe we don't need all three of the things that are in the tank when we do that application. But then Dungannon Dan is out there applying it on wheat that's just started to grow and there's not really visual symptoms. And you say, well, is that because you're seeing deficiency, Dan, or is that just because you've seen deficiency before? Because, like it's proactive. And Dan's answer is it's proactive. Well, in Michael's case, he hasn't seen manganese deficiency before, and manganese does not move in the plant. So trying to do it proactively in a situation where you're not sure you're ever going to see the deficiency is just a waste. If you put that foliar manganese on those lower leaves that aren't deficient, well, that manganese will never move out of those lower leaves to the new growth should the new growth become deficient. So you sort of have to hit the window when you get that deficiency. Meanwhile, Ryan saw manganese deficiency last fall, was told that he could correct it this spring. This spring, he should have corrected that manganese deficiency last fall. When you have manganese deficiency, you need to correct it immediately. The longer it goes deficient, the more yield loss you will suffer. In Ryan's case, the difference in growth is just massive, and it's most likely, I mean, it's really hard to go back in time and say for sure, but it's most likely because the manganese deficiency wasn't dealt with last fall when it showed up. So all of this says, wow, manganese is complicated, and it's so complicated that manganese soil tests are highly, what's the right word? Variable, right? Like they just aren't very good as a predictive tool. And so you kind of go, well, I can't even really soil test. I can, but it's pH dependent, it's organic matter dependent, and it's soil moisture dependent. When soils are wet, the manganese is available. So think this spring for most of Ontario, for your area, Lindsay, it's been wet, the manganese is available. Go to the Dungannon Desert where Dan farms, it's dry, the manganese is going to be much less available. So there's all of these factors come into play, and you just can't do it proactively because it won't move in the plant.
Mm-hmm. Well, Pete, you ruined my question because if you can't proactively deal with it, then I was going to say, well, what about my soil test? Shouldn't I be able to avoid this? But you're pointing out that essentially, while you can monitor such things, you do really need to react should you end up in a position with a deficiency.
Absolutely. The one nice thing, or maybe not nice, but at least manganese tends to be reasonably consistent.
Right.
If you get an area in your field that goes manganese deficient in the soybeans, then there's a pretty good chance it will go manganese deficient in the wheat. Or you can, when it's starting to get dry and you know that area is manganese prone, you can hit it proactively because it's likely, if it's getting dry, going to show up manganese deficiency, and it just isn't quite there yet. But it really is a historical situation, and understanding how that moisture really does play into when the manganese deficiency is going to show up.
Okay. Now, one last thing on this point before we move on. And I don't want to further muddy the waters, but sometimes, not all of us, but some of us confuse manganese and magnesium because the words are similar, their chemical symbols are similar. How do I remind myself magnesium versus manganese? Because we've been talking about manganese. Do I need to even worry about magnesium or just throw that word out of my head?
No, so we can see magnesium deficiency as well. And there, the soil test is a much more reliable predictor. So if you look at a magnesium soil test that is below 100 parts per million, you kind of start to say, okay, particularly on a sand soil where we tend to see magnesium deficiencies more commonly, then you start to look for it. The symptoms are somewhat similar, but not exactly the same. And you can go to the book. The magnesium is is interveinal chlorosis, but tends to be more on the lower leaves, so that as opposed to the upper leaves. So you can get that magnesium manganese different, but they are similar. The soil test is really what will help you sort that out. And for most of us in Ontario, because most of the soils in Ontario were made from dolmitic limestone, we have quite high magnesium levels. Oftentimes we worry about maybe too much magnesium as opposed to too little. So on sand soils, it's possible. On any other soil type, the chances of magnesium deficiency is sort of fairly low.
Okay. Thank you for that. I will try to remind myself. Upper versus lower, lower versus upper. And then I have to remember which is which. It's clear as mud. I got it. Okay. Before we head to a break, I did want to touch on, of course, this is the time of year where we're dealing with winter kill, assessing stands, etc. Discussion with Woody, Kevin, talking about winter kill. Sum it up for us.
Yeah, so really amazing that Woody, where he planted wheat after sugar beets, and where the sugar beets were, where that row was. Now remember, Woody strip tills his sugar beets, plus they pull the sugar beets. So in the row area, the soil was super loose. It was also a little bit of a depression. And there they are, those sugar beet rows, wherever the sugar beets were, the wheat winter killed. And we're not sure if it was ice or snow mold or just what he said. He didn't get much snow. So you kind of say, well, it shouldn't have been snow mold, but he's on a sandy loam soil. So you go, wow, it's hard to imagine that they drowned out. In any case, whatever happened, in the sugar beet rows, minor depressions, wheat is dead. Kevin, down on those heavy clays of Essex, says he's seeing the exact same thing. His comment was, there was more winter kill than I expected. I was disappointed by that. But wherever I had a minor depression, the wheat is dead. And so that on heavy clay makes a bit more sense, because you that little depression, you get the water there, it ices over. If the ice stays long enough, the wheat suffocates. We get that winter kill. And so for the most part, everyone has been saying, the wheat crop looks amazing. And most of the wheat really does, but there is just more of these little issues out there. And some of these really phenomenally interesting micro environments within the same field that just make you shake your head and say, wow, that's weird. What's causing that? And in Woody's case, like you would expect in the sugar beet row with all that loose soil that the water would have gotten away quickly and that the wheat would have loved it. Man, not the case, the exact opposite. So that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.